Hey folks, I'm Papa Boris, and it's time to begin reviewing the games from Stage 2 of the 2026 Through the Ages World Championship. We're up against Spence, Swalgustus, Caesar, and Chunky Sam. We're all pretty evenly rated, except I don't know Swalgustus because this person doesn't actually have a rating yet. Remember that in the World Championship, in each stage, there's 2 4-player games, 3 3-player games, and 3 2-player games. All the games of a certain player count happen simultaneously, so this 4-player game happened at the same time as the other 4-player game, but it finished first, so it's the one that I'm looking at first. Let's jump into it. So Spence was first in this game and grabbed Confucius. Makes sense. I would do the same thing. Extra science is really, really good. He's one of the best leaders. I, however, did not mind that I got to take Hippocrates and Urban Growth, so I get the extra yellow tokens from Hippocrates, which I really like, and then a free rock from the Urban Growth. So Augustus here maybe had the most interesting choice of the first 3 players. Do you just not dick around and grab Acropolis or Stonehenge with Moses? Moses, not one of the most highly coveted leaders, but you get your wonder, get your leader, you can stop dicking around. Do you get Engineering Genius? There's a board full of wonders that are all playable, so you'll get something, probably. There were also the Pyramids still in the deck, those could come out. So you could just take it and get your 2 rocks for your starting draft, or do you take a wonder from here, preferring it over one of these wonders? You could even take one of these wonders and the food. Personally, I think I would just take Moses and Acropolis. I just liked not dick around in the draft, and I think spending my whole draft just to get 2 rocks is not good enough. So Augustus, however, takes a different path. He grabs Library of Alexandria, arguably the quote-unquote best wonder of these 4 that are available. Totally reasonable choice. And then Chunky Sam is kind of a similar situation as Augustus. He could take Colossus and Moses, or Colossus and Frugality. He decides just to take a bunch of cards. He grabs one of the 2-cost wonders. He picks Stonehenge, and then Moses and Frugality just to get a bunch of cards. I think it's a perfectly reasonable play. I wouldn't like it as much because I hate getting free food when I already have Moses. So I would have preferred to play like Engineering Genius Moses or Colossus Moses, or even just Stonehenge Moses, I guess. But I like the Colossus better than Stonehenge, so I maybe would have just taken Colossus and Moses rather than Stonehenge, Moses, and a food. But all in all, I think it's all reasonable. I looked at this, I didn't see any super deep reasons to do something else, so far everything starts off totally normal. Now Spence actually gets a really interesting first turn because right out of the deck, the Pyramids just barely land in the 2 spot, and he decides to grab them. You don't have to do this. With your 4 actions, you could just play Confucius, take Acropolis, take Engineering Genius, and make a mine. That's what I would have done. But Spence can't resist the lure of playing with maybe the best wonder and the best leader, so he grabs the Pyramids. However, if you do this, you are giving up Engineering Genius, because when you play Confucius and make a mine, you leave Engineering Genius on the row. You can't not play Confucius. I mean, you can, but then you're giving up a science. Confucius is one of those leaders that does need to come down on turn 1. Some leaders do, some don't. And obviously you don't want to give up your mine. But Spence actually, first full turn of the 2026 World Championship, in my opinion, makes a pretty big mistake. He actually just takes Engineering Genius anyway and plays Confucius, meaning he doesn't make his mine. Now, when you make a mine, you get a rock. When you take Engineering Genius, you get 2 rocks, but he's giving up a rock to get 2. So he spent an action to get 1 net rock and sacrificed building up his economy. I mean, he's gonna have to build the mine next turn. So he's falling an action behind just to get a rock. It's not worth it. I think this is a stone cold mistake, so I was happy to see it. And that does mean I don't get the Engineering Genius, but had he built the Acropolis, he could have taken the Engineering Genius anyway, and then he just wouldn't have had the Pyramids to build. So on my turn, I need to take a wonder. I decide to grab the Acropolis after doing the standard stuff of play leader, build mine, and raise population. Colossus also is a fair play. You might say, well, don't leave Sun Tzu with the Colossus, but the thing is, Augustus already has a wonder in place, and so does Chunky Sam, so no one's getting the Colossus. If one of my back opponents could have taken the Colossus, I might have taken it myself instead, in order to prevent somebody from getting 2 strength. Granted, the Acropolis does give you 1 strength, but the Colossus with the 2 strength and the military cards is a bit of a scary thing to have behind you if you're low on strength yourself. So maybe I would have taken the Colossus then if my opponents hadn't committed to wonders. But anyway, I think both wonders are fine. I like the Acropolis because it's just 5 rocks instead of 6, so all else being equal, if I'm kind of ambivalent about 2 wonders, I'll pick the one that's cheaper. So a pretty standard turn for me. So Augustus over here has not taken a leader yet. By the way, in the app, so Augustus Caesar is a she. So am I. some people sometimes just pick the female avatar. It doesn't mean that they're women. But Caesar was a guy, so I'm going to be referring to Swalgustus as he. But if anyone knows him, or if you in fact are Swalgustus Caesar, let me know if you actually are a woman, and I'll get your gender correct in the future. Anyway, so Swalgustus builds a mine, takes in place Sun Tzu, and then also just raises population, so a very normal first turn. And we're over to Mr. Chunkster here, Chunky Sam. So Chunky plays down Moses, makes a mine, raises population, and then for his last action, grabs Urban Growth to get a rock. I think it's fine. You keep your food bank closed to avoid this consumption, and you get a rock. One thing to consider is that if you are Moses and you took Frugality, you're already getting a lot of extra food, so keeping this closed just to save a little bit of extra food may not be worth it. I would actually consider just raising population here and just purposefully going into consumption to make it less likely that in the future I will be corrupt. It's also worth considering grabbing Alchemy or Code of Laws for 2 actions here, but Moses is kind of a tricky leader in that way, where because he makes you pay less food to raise your population, you end up having more food and more actions that you spend raising your population. So spending 2 actions up front is a little bit unappealing. I wouldn't have hated it if he had chosen to do this, but I also understand why he didn't want to. Spence, on the other hand, is perfectly fine to pay premium action cost to get good stuff. After playing an event, we get a free warrior. He actually avails himself of this warrior, raises his population. He seems to have an extra worker, though he doesn't. It's because he never built his mine. He does go ahead and get that built, and then for his last 2 actions, he grabs Code of Laws. It makes sense. Confucius gives an extra science, so you want something to spend that science on, and an extra action is pretty great. That plus the pyramids means he's rocking 6 actions, and that's pretty strong. You can go in a lot of different directions if you pull that off early on. In fact, he could, if he wants to, build the pyramids next turn thanks to Engineering Genius. Okay, so it's over to me, and Alchemy just lands in my lap. Now, I just had to take a bit of a weird turn here. I used the free warrior from the event. If that event hadn't flipped, of course, I would just, play a lab, and then next turn I would have 4 science. I could, research alchemy and start making my labs. But because my free worker ended up being used as a free warrior, I don't get to build a lab this turn, which means that I actually can't research alchemy next turn. So I take cultural heritage, so that next turn I'm guaranteed to be able to play alchemy, and then upgrade my lab. Is this correct? I don't know. Maybe it would have been correct just to ignore the free warrior and just build my lab anyway. But I figured giving up 1 science was worth it in order to save 2 rocks in a military action. I could, however, be wrong about that. So it was something I did not feel super easy about. But now that I have 2 actions left over, it's kind of weird. There's not much else for me to do. So what I decided to do was grab this Frugality as well, just for 2 free food. And then I built a stage of the Acropolis. I don't like doing this because, as you know, the Acropolis is not a wonder that needs to be rushed. But that's only because I didn't have the option of making a lab for my worker, which I brought on myself by choosing to make a warrior out of it. But, whatever. That's what happened. That's what happened. And we're moving on to Caesar's turn. So Caesar plays an event. We get a free population. Caesar also uses the free warrior. He pays 2 actions for Engineering Genius 1, which the library's middle stage is happy to get. He also cannot make a lab, but that's fine because he, did use the warrior just like I did. He then grabs the Urban Growth to make the lab cheaper and get 2 free rocks, and builds the first stage of the library. So next turn he's in pretty good shape. He's guaranteed to be able to finish the library. It's kind of like making a second lab, and then in the future he can look forward to making another lab as well. So it's over to Mr. Chunks. He plays an event. We get 3 military cards. He then builds a lab. Did he use this? He did. He built a free warrior, but because he's Moses, he's also able to make an Urban Growth because he can raise his population. He then builds the first stage of Stonehenge. There's not a whole lot to take. I mean, you could take drama here if you want to. You could have paid 2 actions for Code of Laws or alchemy. It's the same option he had earlier, but I think it's also totally fine just to build a stage of the wonder and raise your population again, pay down your civil action debt, and leave yourself flexible for what comes. Nice turn here for Chunky Sam, and back over to Spence. Spence plays another event. We get 2 food, so lots of resources here. He decides to build the pyramids here, and then put the university under construction. Now, I'm not a huge fan of this. As you know, I don't like taking construction projects when on bronze mines. This thing costs 9 rocks. Also, he already has extra science from Confucius, so that makes the university less valuable. What would you do with 2 actions? Well, I would consider 2 things here. One is just raising my population twice, getting all this food out of the way and paying down my civil action debt, or 2, taking masonry and raising population once to get out of corruption. I would prefer both of those moves over putting the university into play. But he decides to do it. Note a little trick, he is corrupt, but he doesn't lose 2 rocks. He only loses a rock and a food because he didn't actually have enough rocks to lose. Still, though, he is losing 2 resources. That's another strike against making the university here. Alright, so on my turn, I play an event. We get a bunch of free stuff. So I'm on a little bit of a tough turn here, actually, because what's happening is Code of Laws landed in my lap, but I have a lot of corruption, so it's really tricky to actually pick this up. What I decide to do is I raise my population. Note, in addition to the trade routes that I played, there was the earlier event, the free population increase. So I get the free population increase, and then I raise my population again. Then I research alchemy, which I don't have to play the cultural heritage for thanks to the trade routes. And with the urban growth I'm actually able to build a lab directly. So that saves me an action. This leaves me with 1 action to grab the Code of Laws. You could also, of course, raise your population here. But I figured it was worth to get a little bit of civil action debt and get this Code of Laws because I do have the alchemy up pretty early. I'll be able to get up to 6 science, get an extra action. My wonder is not giving me an extra action, so this seemed particularly valuable. We're over to Caesar. Caesar plays an event. We get the development of planning, and this is one of the options is a free temple, which everybody but Spence takes, so I'm not going to take the time to go comment on it. So he builds this free temple, picks up monarchy for 2 actions, raises population, builds a warrior. He does have the legion for it, so he's applying pressure to his opponents. He's now in position to do an aggression that's almost guaranteed against anybody. And then he raises population to get out of corruption. Now, he did pass on building a lab and building his wonder to do this. So it was a very costly turn. I'm not sure if I'm a huge fan of this turn. Personally, I would have been okay with letting the monarchy sit there and just finish my wonder. Could he actually have done both? What is this? 5 minus 3 is 2. Yeah, he could have just built the wonder and built a lab, and I would have preferred that over this military push. But he is Sun Tzu. He still gets to draw 2 cards, and he has a fistful of cards. So if one of his opponents slips and doesn't get up in military, then he may be able to do an aggression. It's just I would have preferred to get 2 extra science guaranteed instead of maybe doing an aggression on someone who slips up. Also, it's worth noting that the library gives an extra military card in hand kept, which with Sun Tzu is actually pretty valuable because Sun Tzu is throwing away lots and lots of cards. So how does Chunky Sand decide to deal with this aggressive push? Well, after playing an event, Mr. Chunkster raises population. He also gets the free temple from the development of planning. He grabs the knights, researches the knights, and makes a knight. Now, it's very critical. He doesn't actually have a phalanx or a medieval army here. He just takes irrigation and does not use this last military action. This ends up being very important in this game, and it was quite fortunate for somebody in this room that he did not have a tactic to go with this knight. Spence plays an event. It's historic territory. I don't want to pay anything because I am worried about Caesar. Spence does win it. After playing a warrior and a card, he now grabs Jan with his pile of actions. He's actually the only person who did not use the free temple. He instead decided to use the development of civil life from the development of planning, which let him research Code of Laws as a free action. So why did he pay the temple in order to get an extra action when he already has tons of actions? Well, he takes Jan, he plays Jan over Confucius, he grabs the iron, he raises population 2 times, and then he makes a warrior and drops a fighting band, and that's how he is fighting off Caesar. Now, if he had not had an extra action, he also makes another warrior. So it's interesting to me that if he didn't have an extra action, that would have been not raising his population. He would have had 3 more food, but he wouldn't have been corrupt with the way that he played this. So with that last action, he could have researched Code of Laws. So I'm actually not sure why he gave up a temple. I don't think that was actually worth it. Maybe he thought that since he won the historic territory, he didn't need a temple, but he's going to need it pretty soon, and it's, a lot of games still left to play. It's a lot of culture. I think I personally would have preferred to just have 3 extra food here and a temple and pay a science to have to research the Code of Laws normally. All right, so on my turn, I was really happy to see that nobody took Nostradamus. Chunky and Spence both could have taken Nostradamus, but I'm like, well, if you guys are going to leave that for me at 1 action, I'm taking it. We got our 3 medical symbols from Hippocrates. The time has come to replace them anyway. I mean, it's perfect. If Nostradamus hadn't been there, Jan would have been. I would have probably had to pay 2 actions to get Jan into play, but as it is, I get to take Nostradamus and play him. So now I'm at 5 strength, I'm safe. And what to do with my remaining 3 actions? Well, the Acropolis is a wonder that does not need to be rushed. So I just build up my other lab to get my economy going, raise my population, to get out of corruption, and then I raise it again just to pay down my civil action debt. And next turn, I'm going to look forward to playing Code of Laws. We're over to Caesar. He has nobody to do aggressions against, so now he does what he could have done last turn. He finishes his library, he builds a second lab. He could have done this last turn. He then takes the reserves, it's the only reasonable useful card out here, and then passes the turn. Good, clean, through the ages. The Chunkster plays an event. We have uncertain borders. If Chunky Sam had had a tactic with a knight, either the medieval army or the phalanx, he would have been at 6 or 7 strength, and I would have been the weakest player. I would have lost the yellow token. But instead, Caesar steals the yellow token from Chunky Sam, so that is a bit of bad luck for him. He raises population. Thanks to Moses, he's still able to get into this next bank. He then builds another knight, grabs Isabella, replaces Moses for the extra blue tokens and the extra rock production, and grabs Monarchy, which he'll be able to use the science from Stonehenge on to finish, to research next turn. He still doesn't have any tactics. I am now in last place on tie breaks. Spence is up. He does not play an event, though. He was out of cards, mostly. So I was very fortunate. He grabs Rich Land, grabs the Theocracy, raises population, makes another warrior, and then he takes a breakthrough here, which is very expensive, but he does have 6 actions, and he didn't really have any great ways of using his actions. Next turn, he could research iron and upgrade 2 mines. And so for now, he's just playing a low science game, but making sure that he's top dog militarily and generating some good culture thanks to Jan's 3 armies. All 3 culture is coming from his leader, so it's pretty good for him. I don't mind this play, even though there's this seemingly aggressive yellow card grab for 3 actions. On my turn, I adopt the Fighting Band for my full actions. I want to make sure I use these before we hit H2, so I'm missing out on H1 draws instead of H2 draws. I finish the Acropolis because it's not likely, but it might actually run out the deck before my next turn, so I need to get that finished. And what to do with my last 3 actions? Well, let's get the Code of Laws down. Let's play the Cultural Heritage. Let's take the iron so I can up my rocks, and let's also grab Warfare. I do have, good science production, so I may be able to play this to be able to hold on to more cards and just get a little bit of extra strength. I've been trying to appreciate the Warfare more and more because that one extra military action is sometimes oh so critical in the late game for pulling off aggressions and not missing out on draws. Now you might say that the iron's a bit late. I wouldn't argue with you too hard. I could have taken knights here, but I was thinking that there's knights and knights, so there's a decent chance I was going to get knights anyways to use my phalanx with. And in any case, I wasn't sure how excited I was to play the phalanx because Spence, with Jan, might really want to make phalanxes and do the crazy Jan stuff where you build like 3 knights and just obliterate people. And then if Caesar copied over one of my knight techs, then it would become stronger, which could mean that Jan's thing was stronger. So I wasn't actually committed necessarily. I wasn't going to be that upset if both knights got taken. I could either wait for cavalrymen in H2, which is only 1 science more, or just not use the knight tactics if my opponents didn't pressure me enough and Nostradamus was good enough for me not to be the weakest. So that's that. We're over to Caesar. Caesar does take knights, also grabs Frederick, plays a phalanx from his hand, then gets rid of Sun Tzu, so this phalanx is now +1 strength. He drops a knight, and then uses Barbarossa to make a knight and get a phalanx going up to 9 strength. I'm still safe at 7, but that is a very aggressive move. He also grabs the iron, and next turn he'll be able to make 2 iron mines, or maybe just keep going crazy with Barbarossa and these reserves. Now, Chunky Sam here makes a cataclysmic blunder. The move here is you need to finish your Stonehenge, because this is your last turn to finish it. Get 5 science going up to 11 and research Monarchy. Fix your actions up a little bit, and then do whatever the hell else you want for your other turn. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 to play Monarchy and build the Wonder, and then you have 1 left. You could take Swords, you could take Urban Growth. None of these cards are that exciting, but it is what it is. However, he decides to take and research Cartography, which means he's not finishing the Wonder. I think he just forgot that this Wonder is about to get blown up. I think he just overlooked it because he actually built a stage. Now, because it is Stonehenge, he didn't get nothing for it. He did get 3 science for 3 rocks. He got the opportunity to exchange rocks for science, but that's obviously not good compared to having the wonder actually finish. This happy face is quite relevant. So this was a bit of a disaster here. He just totally forgot about the wonder disappearing. And then he also adopts the saddest fighting band of all time. This is a little weird too, because the phalanx, which is boosted from Sun Tzu, will be available to him next turn. This is only giving 1 strength for this fighting band. Now, there is the merit of, well, if you do it now, you're not missing H2 draws, you're missing H1 draws, but you really should just get the 4 strength phalanx instead of the 2 strength fighting band, or the 1 strength fighting band. So I think he shouldn't have done this. Of course, ideally, he would have finished the wonder, done the monarchy, and then not had to miss all of his H2 draws next time, taking over the phalanx. All right, so it's over to Spence. Spence plays an event. I am last, but luckily it's just a Confucius card. He grabs the swordsman, researches them, grabs patriotism, researches iron, upgrades 1 mine, but doesn't upgrade 2. Instead, he spends some rocks upgrading swords and cashing out his H1 draws instead of his H2 draws to get these upgrades done. He also takes the knights, which I was sad about, because now that that phalanx hit, I was like, oh shoot, I'd like to have the knights, but alas, they are gone, which is sensible, and it's back over to me. So I raise my population, which is always fun when you can do this. It's just totally clean. I empty out the bank. I have no food, causing me to be corrupt. What do I do with my time? Well, I decide not to research iron. I could have upgraded a mine, but I decided to play the warfare to respect this military situation, going with Jan before me and Caesar after me. I also grabbed the breakthrough because 2 signs for 1 action is really great. 2 rocks for an action is about as good as I can do here. And then my last action is a bit underwhelming. I could actually have built a lab thanks to the Acropolis, but the problem is that we are about to lose 2 tokens. I get 1 back because I'm Hippocrates, but if I make a lab, I only then have 1 token left to work with to put in my military, and there was a chance I was going to need more than 1 if these players kept on being aggressive. So I did kind of sacrifice some science production and putting a sort of crappy card in my hand, because when am I going to use this frugality? Not anytime soon, right? I did a little bit of sacrificing here in order to respect my opponent's military. Whether that's correct or too timid is a matter of some debate. So I pass the turn, and we go over to Caesar. So H2 hits, the Stonehenge from Junkie Sam disappears, and it's time to begin. He plays an event. It's the inhabited territory, and Caesar had some way that he could have gotten out of this. He has like an extra warrior he could spend. But winning this is obviously very nice. He pays out the ass for it. He gives up 3 units to win this colony, but it makes sense because it fixes his revolt issues. He then plays that reserves that he got earlier, which is clutch, because now with the 2 food, he can use Barbarossa's ability and make a warrior normally to bring back the phalanx and be totally fine on strength. Then he researches monarchy, which the military action is quite valuable as well as the civil action in his case. Grabs a rich land, grabs the reserves, which is useful with Barbarossa for, getting more stuff out of here. And his last action is not super great. He takes the printing press because there's something better to take and passes the turn. The Chunkster is up. He grabs theology, researches it, and just straight up builds one to fix his revolt issues. He really ended up being in a bummer of a situation because he didn't finish that Stonehenge, which, remember, would have given him an extra happy face. And then he adopts the phalanx, so he did this anyway, losing both H2 draws, and then the fighting band that he had in the meantime did nothing except lose him 2 H1 card draws. He also puts the Himeji Castle under construction. Now this, as you know, I'm not a huge fan of doing blah blah blah, but he is making 1 extra rock at least because he's Isabella, and, military is a bit of a thing this game, so I don't actually hate this move. He could have taken the rifleman. He could have taken an opera for future culture gain, or even an alchemy to fix up his science, but I don't mind this here because the culture is not irrelevant, and then the strength could matter as well. Back over to Spence. He plays an event. It's the science, which I'm happy about. I make more science than everybody else. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4 situation. I'm always happy to be at the forefront of that. Get it? Forefront. Anyway, he grabs the reserves because he has tons of actions. He grabs the cannon, so now he can do any H2 tactic, given enough time and science, of course. Grabs drama, and he builds the first stage of the wonder. If it didn't have this wonder, you gotta upgrade it a mine or something, but instead this thing is a monkey on his back. We're into H2, and he's still a ways off from building it. This is one of the reasons why I don't like undertaking Age 1 wonder projects when I'm at 3 rocks. Okay, in this case, 4 with 1 iron. So I'm happy that Cavalrymen were like the second card of the deck, because now I can take it, research it, and make one, and then I also copy over the Phalanx using this critical extra military action from Warfare. Again, I am delaying my Iron, and again, that may be a mistake. Maybe I'm being a little bit timid here. But I decided to just do this. I also could have played an event, but I didn't want to feed colonies to a cartography, and I was concerned about the barbarians making me lose a population. So that may have been too timid as well, because Nostradamus does make 3 culture per event played, and I'm just not been playing at events with him. Maybe it's too timid. So what do I do with my last 3 actions here? Well, at this point, I actually have enough science still to research iron and upgrade a mine, but with this constitutional monarchy here, I just take it. Next turn, I'm going to have enough science to do it, which means I'm going to not be doing iron yet again. Possibly a misplay here with how long I'm waiting on these irons. But I just thought, man, 9 science to fix my civil actions and military actions and just be set for actions for the rest of the game this early in H2 just seems way too good not to do. So I just grabbed it and sucked up not having iron again. All right, Caesar takes Rifleman, builds another horse, plays reserves for food, which he can then make another horse with, grabs the scientific method to fix a science later, and a frugality. The Chunkster does a revolution into monarchy, which is curious because he could have just paid for it, but he just decides to do a revolution and pass the turn. One thing to note is we have the classic combo here. If you're a newer player, don't miss this. There's Robespierre and Republic. So Chunky Sam with 4 actions could have actually taken Robespierre, played him for free, taken Republic, been down to 0 civil actions, and then done a revolution into Republic. So it was kind of would have been the same thing as what he did, revolting into monarchy, except that he would have lost the rock from Isabella, he would have gained a military action from Robespierre, and he would have gotten 3 extra actions. Well, okay, 3 extra actions to use this turn, 2 extra actions overall compared to monarchy. So I think he should have done it. I would have done it in this case. I mean, it does have that issue when you do the early Republic, where you're really reliant on Robespierre's military action. But he has all the rest of H2 to try to find strategy. I mean, obviously that's not guaranteed. There's only 1 copy of it. But, you know, try to find strategy maybe with his low science somehow and get that done. With the Republic's actions, he could take like revolutionary ideas and try to pay for the science with yellow cards. So he could have tried to like work his way out of this military action deficit situation and then just had tons of actions to work with to grab yellow cards and get his economy up and running. But he decides to go for monarchy, which means that he leaves the option for Spence to do the same thing. Spence would have a little bit of an awkward time because he actually is at his hand limit here. But he could just like, you know, play a thing, then take Robespierre, replace Jan von Shish Kebab, take Republic, and do the revolt in the Republic. However, with the pyramids and with Code of Laws, the Republic is kind of unappealing. It's just like a lot of civil actions and your military actions suck. So he passed on it, which I don't actually think was a mistake. He plays an event. We get more science from a Confucius card. He plays the reserves, finishes the Wonder at the expense of getting his iron mines up and running, researches the knights with all of his science, plays patriotism, drops back a warrior, makes a knight, and then copies over the Sun Tzu boosted phalanx to go up to 12. It's worth noting that if he had another, if one of his swordsmen were a knight, then with Jan, he would actually get another copy of this tactic and have an extra 4 strength. So it's kind of nice that he committed to the swordsman earlier because it is hurting him now. He also grabs frugality, which is a bit of a forward-looking move since he can't raise his population, but not much else to really do here if he doesn't want to commit to these leaders, and he passes the turn. So now I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, because I could take Robespierre in Republic, but I have the Acropolis. So it's like, well, do I really want to, you know, do a revolution and not use the Acropolis' power? Like, it may still be correct to do it, but I decided not to take Robespierre. So what I do instead is I research the constitutional monarchy normally, and I decide to replace Nostradamus with Napoleon. Napoleon just gives me straight up 4 strength, just 4, rather than Nostradamus' 3, and a military action. And I figure it's worth giving up the points for playing events thing, because I'm not playing events anyways. Now I do build my lab since I'm feeling more comfortable on strength, and with 3 extra actions to go, I grab the organized religion to fix my happy faces up later and the urban growth to help make it happen. I'm passing on architecture with some misgivings, but I figured that the happy faces were too important here. And then my science in the short term was probably going to be going to this very belated iron. Caesar plays an event. We have a vast territory. We all kind of give it a shot, but Chunky manages to steal it for a song here. Just a single warrior, cartography, and a defense card. So that's a good turn for him. Caesar finally plays Iron, grabs the strategy, and upgrades a mine to get out of corruption. He has kind of low science, but he's willing to commit to this in order to fix his military actions, which I think is perfectly reasonable. And we're over to the chunks. Mr. Chunky plays an event. Or, no, that doesn't play an event. Raises population, makes another warrior, grabs the wave, researches irrigation, and fixes both farms. It's a bit awkward because now he's one rock short of building this castle, and at this point this castle has been sitting around long enough that, you know, if you weren't going to commit to building it, it was maybe a mistake to take it. I would have just like made one farm and then made one stage of this castle, or even just built the castle this turn. Actually, I don't think he could he? He didn't have enough. No, he spent 6 rocks, so he would have had to not build a warrior, which means not having a phalanx. Yeah, it's a little weird. When he got the colony, he paid a warrior, but that lopped off his tactic. He could have paid a knight, but then with the H2 defense card, he would have been overpaying for the colony. So it was a little bit of a weird situation here, but he still could have built the wonder here and just been at like 8 strength without the tactic and gotten the wonder out of the way. I think I would have preferred that over this move and getting the farms and then having to wait a whole 2 more turns to get the wonder built. So Spence plays no event. He revolts into Theocracy, which is a very efficient use of science, and builds another knight. With Jan, he now has 2 copies of the Sun Tzu boosted phalanx and is looking quite strong and menacing, especially over Chunky Sam and even Caesar, who put that tactic down to begin with. So on my turn, I play an event finally. We get rats, which hurts everybody but me, so I was pretty thrilled about it. Now I finally research this iron and make a couple of upgrades, and at this point I've got 4 actions left, so what do? Well, I decided to upgrade the other lab with my urban growth instead of waiting to use it on the organized religion. I don't currently desperately need this extra worker. And then I grabbed the selective breeding. I really hemmed and hawed over this. With Napoleon, there's a lot of value to cannon because that gives me an extra 2 strength. It also opens me up to some useful tactics like the mobile artillery with the horse cannon or just the fortifications or whatever they're called where it's just 2 cannons. So passing on this is sad. I could have taken Revolutionary Idea and Cannon. This is a really valuable card. I could have also taken Revolutionary Idea or an efficient upgrade or one or the other. That's also really valuable. Selective breeding, well, Swalgustus I figured was going to take it. Chunky Sam already got the irrigation, so he doesn't need it, but Spence also needs it. So there's 3 copies of selective breeding, and it's, you know, I was gonna get one because there's no way Chunky Sam's ever gonna take it. And so do I need to really pay 3 actions for it? But I was like, you know what? Like, I really want to just do this. I want to just play it next turn and upgrade it and start getting my food up and running. But I can't upgrade twice. I don't have 8 rocks to do it with. So I think this may have been ultimately a mistake, because I'm not going to actually get the selective breeding up that much faster, and I am passing on some really valuable cards, like these yellows are super valuable, and so is the cannon. So Swalgustus plays an event. It's a wealthy territory. I don't bet on it. Chunky Sam gets to win it again for another event card and just a single warrior. Then Swalgustus researches the rifles, upgrades them just to get 4 extra raw strength to look less menacing under Spence. He then upgrades a mine, gets a classic army down, and decides to take and play Catherine, so he's threatening to steal a yellow token from everybody. And he takes the Revolutionary Idea that I left behind. So he's ready to do this with strategy if this is just not enough to steal a yellow token with Catherine. Chunky Sam builds the castle. He blows up a temple and then makes another horse. He gets the heavy cavalry, which is very curious because it's 4 strength, but so is the phalanx from Sun Tzu. And that requires less rock investment and also a better split of units. He also takes the coal and efficient upgrade. So he is going to lose a yellow token. Spence plays an event. It's a 4A. Unfortunately, this came too late. I don't get the free resources for it. He grabs selective breeding, which showed up right behind the one that I paid 3 actions for, and then there's the other one, so I did not need to spend 3 actions on it. I mean, these might have come later, of course, but this, is one way to illustrate why my move was not a mistake. He researches it, grabs Maria, upgrades a farm, and upgrades the other farm, so he's ready to make new workers, and he's also ready to get free science and culture from making those workers. But interestingly, he never raises strength, so he's also going to lose a yellow token. So here, I was really torn about what to do. Like, is there some clean way for me to avoid losing a yellow token to Catherine? And ultimately, I realized there just wasn't a good way. So I gave up on the idea. I played an event, It's the Crusades, so Swalgustus steals 4 culture from Chunky Sam. And I just accept the fact that I'm going to lose a yellow token. So I research selective breeding, I upgrade it once, I grab these rifles, and I grab the opera. So I want a way to make culture, I want a way to upgrade my rifles, or my warriors into rifles, and also to build this, to get this tactic going later with the cannon that I could have already had if I had not taken selective breeding before. Caesar uses Catherine's ability, finishes upgrading his rocks, plays the revolutionary idea, grabs selective breeding himself, also takes team sports to fix his happy faces later, and that's his turn. The Chunkster is up now, and the Chunkster decides to build the Suez Canal at 4 rocks. A bit of an undertaking. I'm not a huge fan, but maybe you could say there wasn't that much else to do. On the other hand, he could have researched coal and done an efficient upgrade, for example. But he does that, so he researches it, gets an upgrade on. He doesn't have enough now to make the Suez Canal next turn, and I don't like building Age 2 wonders into Age 3. I think at this point, if you're going to do an Age 2 wonder, you need to build it that turn or the turn after. He also grabs the architecture on low science and passes the turn. So things are looking a little rough for Mr. Chunks. Spence is up, plays an event. It's the Barbarians. Luckily, Spence dodges it. If I had beaten him somehow, or if this had come later, I could have actually stung him with it. He now plays Maria right after. Like, if this had been the situation, he would have been tied with me. So if he had played Maria and then I got a little stronger, he actually would have lost a population that event, which would have been devastating for him. He raises population a couple of times, makes another horse, so now he has 2 of these phalanxes. He then because he wouldn't have. He would have still been okay because he fixed his strength issue by the end of the turn. He's investing a lot of workers though into this army, and it's not super efficient, so he's going to need to fix that. He researches drama, which is his last chance because it is going to disappear when the age ends. Grabs a breakthrough and then passes the turn. So on my turn, I research the organized religion and upgrade it with just some rocks to fix my revolt that was caused by losing the yellow token. I now take the efficient upgrade because I still have things I want to upgrade, and I take the rich land because I still have things I want to upgrade, and I could have taken cannon. I was really torn about this, and maybe I should have. What exactly is this urban growth doing? Well, I'm dreaming of making an opera. I'm not really that far behind my opponents that like making an extra 3 culture per turn is irrelevant, and plus, if you look at the leaders here, there is Marlene. So there is some synergy with operas, so I was thinking that would be a useful thing to be able to do, but I think this is a mistake. I think I need to take cannon here. I already have a tactic that uses cannons. Committing to waiting for rockets is risky because the rockets might be late, the extra cost of the rockets might be hard for me to bear, someone else might take the rockets. Like, I should have just taken the cannon here. It was really too valuable to pass up, and this urban growth is way too speculative. So, Napoleon's sitting here a little vulnerable. We get to the next stage. This frugality never did get used. Caesar plays an event. We have the inhabited territory, which Spence pays out the butt for. He has to drop basically an entire army for it. So Caesar plays the team sports, blows up a temple, and turns it into a team sport. He was just 1 food short of being able to raise the population to get out of his revolt issues. And then for his last 2 actions, he researches scientific method and just upgrades a lab to start fixing up his science. Chunky Sam is up, grabs the engineering genius to help with the Suez Canal, raises population, grabs the scientific method to belatedly fix up his science, and then builds another temple, which is a little bit curious because he didn't, strictly speaking, need it. He could have just had an unhappy worker here, and he could have used those rocks to upgrade his coal mine. I would have preferred that over making this, at the moment, unnecessary temple. The cannons are about to disappear, which is extremely sad. Spence couldn't have taken them because he already had them, but they're going to fall off right before I can take them, which I'm very sad about. So he does a breakthrough to cannons. He makes a cannon. He has the mobile artillery, which I could have had too if I had taken cannon. And then he grabs the reserves, the breakthrough, and just raises population to finish up his actions by getting some resources. Now, luckily for me, this reserves does fall into my lap. So on my turn, I play an event. It's freedom of movement, which I don't believe I use, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I just didn't find a way to use it efficiently. I decide to drop Napoleon here, which is a little bit risky, because I'm losing 4 strength. But Churchill, with the science and the rocks, just seems really valuable. So I take him, I play him, I use his ability, I research those riflemen for cheap, get a couple of upgrades, so I'm back to where I was with Napoleon, at least. I then finally upgrade my last iron mine, finally upgrade my last farm, grab these reserves, and then raise population just to finish my last action. All right, we got Caesar, plays an event. We get the crime wave, Chunky and I lose 3 culture apiece. He grabs the democracy, the tanks, and the endowment for the arts. It's a curious turn, but he didn't have much else that he could really do. So he spent basically the free action from Freedom of Movement to upgrade a lab into a better lab, and that used up all his rocks, and there was nothing else for him to do. He could have maybe like taken reserves or patriotism, which are maybe more valuable than some of these cards, especially this very optimistic democracy. But, you know, he does have 7 signs with a revolutionary idea. Maybe he could actually research this at some point and get 3 culture per turn. And then the tanks might allow him to use H3 tactics. All right, it's time for Chunky to go. Chunky offers a military alliance to Spence. Curiously, not me. I'm the weakest, but no, I get passed over like a cold hot dog on Christmas, and they both get 3 strength. He then plays the Engineering Genius 2 and builds the canal. For the territory, he had a wealthy territory too, which isn't even that amazing with the Suez Canal. Usually with Suez Canal, you don't want just to get your rocks back. You want to like get yellow tokens. So this emphasizes to me at least that going after the Suez Canal is a mistake, because then after developing the scientific method, he's out of actions and has nothing else to do. So while he is getting decent rocks from his 3 colonies, I don't think that was worth the Suez Canal, especially having it finished this late into age 3. So reserves falls right into the lap of Spence, who is, I'm sure, very happy to see it. Spence grabs the oil, interestingly. I would not have made this move, but I have a problem. I tend to undervalue oil. But he decides to grab it. He raises population, which gives him another science, allowing him to research the oil and upgrade an age 1 iron mine into an oil mine. Then he grabs the reserves for his last action. So he's trying to get some really good rocks here. I don't know if that's correct. It's a lot of science, lots of rocks to do this upgrade, but I mean, now he is making lots more rocks for the rest of age 3, so I'm not sure if I'm correct in my bias against oil. Like, I would have just taken the patriotism and the urban growth, just getting rocks that way. Or if this actually is a mistake and he shouldn't have done it. He also makes another horse and passes the turn. So I'm the weakest player. I don't play any events. I use Churchill to make another knight, and I copy the classic army. I'm not thrilled about this because I'm losing an age 3 draw. But this is a way for me to get out of my strength issues, and it was around this point that I decided my strategy here is I'm going all in on military. So the thinking, oops, wrong button. The thinking here is that I am falling behind. Luckily, no one went super crazy with culture, but I am like getting to be about 30 points behind Spence and a little under 20 points behind Caesar. I could, of course, try to like make operas or something, but with the current state of like the rock production and the actions, I didn't think I had enough of an advantage with actions that I could actually like build my way out of a culture deficit. So I figured let's just go all in on military. So my hope is that I can at the very least use classic armies and airplanes to beat up on somebody and win the game. It was a bit of a stretch, but I figured that was my best hope, and I liked my odds of accomplishing that more than winning through operas. Now, I did research the opera, and I built one with that urban growth I took ages ago, just to stem some of the cultural bleeding, but I didn't think I could do enough with the operas to win the game. Whether I was wrong about that or not, I don't know. But then I take the yellow cards to get a bunch of rocks, and at this point with 2 actions, I'm kind of in an awkward spot. There's nothing really useful for me to do with these actions. So I took the fundamentalism in case that would somehow matter in a war later, and I just played the reserves for food. Now that's a bit of an aggressive move because, I might need the rocks, but my thinking was Churchill's giving me 3 rocks per turn, so I kind of have 9 rocks a turn if you think about it that way. And so that means that food is more of a limiting factor than rocks are. So I was willing to make this commitment in order to use my actions efficiently. All right, Caesar comes up. It's popularization of science, which is decent for me and Caesar and not as good for everyone else. He researches the strategy finally, researches the elective breeding, upgrades a farm, puts the International Red Cross under construction, and passes the turn. Not a huge fan of this. The International Red Cross is this wonder that you can kind of like build as a team project where you get a little bit more than everybody else. Not a huge fan of it. I would honestly just rather take reserves for those actions instead of putting it under construction. Because what's going to happen is like, okay, he's not going crazy with food. He makes like a stage. Chunky makes a stage. Spence makes a stage. I make a stage. He makes like 2 stages or something. But it's really weird because like if other people actually do go for it, he doesn't have reserves here. So he makes a stage, everybody makes a stage, and then he actually can't make the other stage. So one of his opponents could actually potentially make 2 stages. It just seems like a lot of actions and not that many points. So I'm not a huge fan of this line. Chunky gets shock troops going. So that was good news for me. That is a little bit better than classic army. So now I could potentially make 4 horsemen and have 2 shock troops instead of making 4 horsemen and rifles evenly split and just having another 8 strength. So I was happy to see that, especially because for Chunky himself, it's currently out of date. He upgrades a lab, upgrades another lab, grabs the modern infantry, but he noticed the shock troops, that requires H2 or better horses as well. So he still needs tanks now and upgrade all these to tanks with, the science and the rocks that he has to get this to be upgraded. So I was really happy he played it because it's out of date for him, but it might not be out of date for me. He then raises population, grabs communism, and passes the turn. Interesting pick of communism here. You kind of have to plan to revolt to it, but then you're going to be revolting thanks to the loss of the happy face. So he needed to plan a little bit better. I beg your pardon. I'm wrong. This worker becomes unhappy. So he could revolt to communism next time to fix his actions a bit. Personally, I'd prefer just to deal with monarchy here and grab military theory because the extra strength in actions could be more important, especially if you're trying some kind of a military comeback. All right, so it's over to Spence. He plays an event. It's this. Spence has to lose a colony. He's the weakest now. Chunky just barely got ahead of him. It's not the end of the world. He loses the historic territory, so he loses a happy face. Obviously, he wasn't going to lose 3 yellow tokens. But okay, it's a bit annoying to lose the happy face, but not the end of the world. He builds a stage of Caesar's Red Cross. He makes another cannon, so now he gets out of it. Had he done this earlier, had this been a little bit later, he actually would not have been the weakest, and he could have kept that colony. He grabs Revolutionary Idea, grabs the airplanes, which I was very sad to see because, of course, I want the airplanes to do my warring, and he's making another cannon, so it's going to be difficult for me to get a war going on this guy. All right, so on my turn, I play an event. We get the Politics of Strength, which I don't win, which is very sad because I would have won it a little bit later. And what am I going to do? My plan is definitely to try to win this game through war. There isn't airplanes here. There's also these juicy reserves, and I was trying to figure out how to balance everything and when to declare war and when not to and so on. Ultimately, did I crash it? I did that thing where I pressed OK, or I pressed the pause button before pressing OK. Okay, hang on. I'm going to have to load this. Okay, so we're on Chunky's turn. Okay, sorry about that. So let's get through Spence's turn. Okay, so over to me. I play an event. It's the very sad Politics of Strength that I don't get to win. I decided to take the airplanes. It's too risky not to. I used Churchill. I researched airplanes, made a worker, and made a plane. The problem is, this is one of the things I was really agonizing about, is that now I'm corrupt. So I don't get to take these reserves if I pay food to raise the population and get out of corruption. Of course, I could have not used Churchill, but and then I could have taken the reserves, but then what am I really accomplishing? I'm passing on 3 rocks now to get 4 rocks later. It just seemed kind of stupid. So it was a really annoying turn. I really agonized over it. I thought of trying to do other permutations, but ultimately I decided to just pass on these reserves, much as that sucks, fix up my happy faces, so now any workers I pull out of here are actually happy, and I'm getting an extra culture, which might not be irrelevant, and then I pass the turn from here. All right, Caesar's up, plays an event. It's refugees. Now, I do take this one, so I'm very happy about that, because that extra worker is a big deal. So I missed out on the cards, but at least I got the extra worker. Caesar raises population, builds a stage of the wonder, grabs the reserves and the other reserves, which makes perfect sense. So those really sat there for a long time. Also makes a rifle to not, be a tempting target for me, and passes the turn. All right, Chunky Sam does the revolution into communism. Passes the turn after that. And it's over to Spence. I was very curious what he would do. He offers tourism to Chunky Sam, which I was really unhappy about because now they're both making more culture. He builds a stage of Caesar's Cross, gets some science, disbands a swordsman, makes a knight, so he's respecting my strength push here, plays the reserves, upgrades to another oil mine, and then plays more reserves for food this time and makes another worker. This is a pretty instructive turn because now, notice how he's making himself a really unappealing target. He doesn't have to do this, but he could research Air Force next turn, and with patriotism, get up to exactly 14 rocks and make 2 airplanes for another 20 strength. So the thing I was wondering about is, I'm only going to get 2 more chances to declare a war at this point, Do I want to do it now and do 2 wars, basically? Ultimately, I decided no. I did a plunder on Chunky, which was basically guaranteed. My thinking was, let's do this plunder, build up a bigger army, and just do 1 war. So I stole mostly food from Chunky in order to be able to get a worker now and then a worker in 2 turns. It's a little bit odd, but I decided to take the minimum number of rocks that I needed to accomplish my goals. Maybe that was a little bit weird and I should have just used my labs as a battery of workers and just taken fully rocks. It's hard to say. So I built a stage of the Red Cross. Oh, right, that's what it is. I needed enough food to get a worker now, but also have enough food left over to go for the Red Cross for 6 points. And then this 1 food is sort of irrelevant. Like, it's going to take like 3 turns to get up to 7 food. I'm not actually sure this actually made sense. Maybe I should have just taken an extra rock. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking about that one. So now I have this modern army, which means if Rockets comes out, I actually could get a couple of modern armies instead of a couple of classic armies. It's an extra 13 strength per army, or 13 strength per army instead of 8. So it's an extra 5 strength per army, doubled with planes. Like, it's actually kind of a big strength boost. So I was very happy to see this. I decided to stay flexible for the potential to use the modern army if Rockets came out. So the way that I did it was I played the patriotism, used Churchill, and I made 2 rifles. So, like, I could now make 2 horses and then get another classic army tactic, or I could make 2 rockets if those come out, and then that's 2 modern armies ready to go. And with 11 rocks plus Churchill's 3, I can make 2 rockets exactly. So the extra rocks that the 1 rock that I stole from Chunky Sam is actually very critical, because without that I could only make 1 rocket. Stealing more rocks from him would not have let me make any more rockets. So maybe that is why I decided to steal all that food, because it's useful now. It lets me keep my labs, and the extra rocks were not going to help that much beyond the 1. I grabbed military theory so that maybe I'll get some extra strength by upgrading this warfare. I decided to do it now, and then I also grabbed civil service. It's a bit of a loose grab. There's nothing that I'm doing with it, but the civil service, I probably would have taken whatever was here. Like, yeah, multimedia might be useful maybe in the future to like get some points or something, and science for the impact of science or something weird like that over an opera. But mainly, I just don't want to take more cards from the row than I have to, because there's a slight chance that I actually get 2 more turns to declare war this way if people are slow about taking cards. But I wasn't planning on it. I was expecting my next turn to be my last chance to declare a war. Caesar plays an event. We get the Iconoclasm, which is great. So Catherine and Maria go away. My 2 strongest opponents are now losing their sources of culture, and in Caesar's case, a military action. But Caesar decides to just say, okay, no problem, let's grab Marie. Gets a couple of strength, a science, a couple of culture. Finishes the Red Cross. Grabs oil and researches the tanks. He also starts upgrading those tanks, potentially looking to use up that shock troops that Chunky Sam has played earlier, oh so helpfully for him. So Chunky grabs the tanks, researches them, plays the Wave of Nationalism finally, and gets some tanks upgraded. Next turn, he will be able to upgrade this crucial modern infantry and finally have an updated shock troops. He then grabs Sid, plays him to start generating 4 culture a turn, and raises population just to use up his actions, and then he passes. Spence plays an event. We get Civil Unrest, which does not hurt me, but it costs Spence 8 culture and Chunky Sam 4. He then puts the United Nations under construction, upgrades his final mine to oil, grabs multimedia, and passes the turn. Notice that now with 17 rocks and a patriotism, okay, never mind. He cannot make 3 airplanes. He can only make 2 airplanes and get 20 strength. But if an event comes up that gives him any rocks, even 1 somehow, then he can actually make 3 airplanes for an extra 30 strength. So now I'm thinking, okay, this might be our last chance to declare war. Who do I go against? It's a tough call, because my opponents are sort of similar on culture and sort of similar on strength. In fact, Spence, has less strength but can get another 20, whereas with Caesar, it's a bit harder to calculate how much strength he can get because he has these reserves. But ultimately, I decided to go for the sure thing. With Spence, when only 3 military actions, I kind of can predict that he's just going to make 2 or maybe 3 airplanes, and so I knew for sure that I could beat him. Whereas with Caesar, I didn't want to calculate that hard. I figured, let me Declare war on Spence now, get a sure thing here, and then if I happen to get an extra turn for another war, then I can declare on Caesar next time. So, I go for the war on Spence. I grab the rockets, which did show up at 2 actions for me, which is quite fortunate. I research them, blow up to a lab and a mine, and make 2 rockets, and then I have enough to also drop my modern army. I take the efficient upgrade, and then I just pass with my last civil action, because I'm like, well, there's a chance with 8 cards left on Caesar's turn that I get another chance to declare a war. And since I did draw another war over culture, like, I want the opportunity for that. So since I didn't value anything here anyways, I just took whatever was going to disappear regardless, even if I wasn't planning on using it, and I just actually wasted my last action. Caesar plays an event. It's economic progress, which does give Spence a butt ton of rocks, so now Spence will be able to make 3 airplanes instead of just 2. I accounted for that. I'm still going to beat him, just not by as much. Caesar also gets oil, also takes planes, upgrades in oil a couple of times, so right after the economic progress, so luckily that didn't happen later, and then he passes the turn. Chunky Sam gets the modern infantry down. He finishes his project of getting an up-to-date shock troops. He raises population, builds another temple, builds another lab for 2 extra culture with Sid, gets the mechanized agriculture, revolutionary idea, and the multimedia. So he's really cranking now. He's getting tons of culture, but it's just a little bit too little, a little bit too late. Took him a little too long to get going, and he's not going to have enough time to catch up to everybody. But what's interesting is that he didn't, end the round. So H4 does not hit on Spence's turn, which means I am going to get to use another war. Spence takes the pro sports, researches it, researches airplanes, builds a pro sports to fix his happy faces. Now he has enough actions left over, just enough to make 3 workers for 3 planes, and then build 3 planes without having to spend an action to play the patriotism. So this patriotism will be lost, but he didn't need it, thanks to the economic progress. Still, though, I am going to steal 15 culture from him, which is a 30-point swing, and I now get to declare war on Augustus Caesar. I used the regular war over culture just to steal the maximum amount of culture. I didn't really value the happy face nonsense. So here I'm sadly not, and I don't have enough science to get to fundamentalism, but I raise population, make a plane. I do need Churchill for that. So Churchill was an absolute beast for me this game. And now what to do with my other actions? Well, I decided to just grab engineering. I think I put impact of progress in there. So this is just like 6 points basically. I grabbed the computers and I grabbed the movies. I don't actually value the yellow cards. I have like nothing to do with them next turn anyways. So I just took anything that might help my opponents generate more culture or build more buildings. So here I am at 96 strength. So Augustus Caesar made a really funny comment. I don't know if it's saved in the chat or not. Yeah, it's not saved, but he wrote, like, I've been dreading this war for the last 2 days, which is true, because, the way that these games progress in real time is a bit slow. So now Caesar plays an event, we all get some free food, and he does a pretty respectable job defending against the war. He blows up a farm, blows up his weakest mine, blows up one of his H2 labs, which is pretty serious, but, you gotta do what you gotta do. He plays the reserves, airplanes, makes an airplane, makes another horse, and makes another rifle. So he doesn't actually end up switching to shock troops, but he does make 2 classic armies, one of which is doubled, for a very respectable 62 strength, although 62 is still 34 less than 96, so I'm going to steal 39 points of culture from him, or 39 points of culture from him. So Chunky Sam does not have any wars declared against him, but is just way behind on culture. Still, though, now that Caesar is going to have all these points stolen from him, Chunky's like, well, I'm going to go for it here. So he makes a 4th temple, blows up a mine, makes a 4th lab. With this communism he revolted to, he's now making 16 culture per turn from these 4 labs in Sid. Grabs the yellow card and the rockets, passes the turn. Spence now does an occupy on Chunky. Grabs Marlene, plays her, and then with those resources is able to make a temple and finish the United Nations. So on my turn, I steal 39 culture from Caesar. I do a plunder on Chunky, so Chunky is making a lot of culture, but he is also kind of the punching bag of everybody here. And with these extra 7 rocks, I raise population, research engineering, and make an opera. I also disband an airplane and make another opera, with the events I had played out, I knew that I needed the labs and the mines, so the airplane actually seemed like the least useful thing, and unfortunately there's nothing else for me to do, so my last 3 actions go unused. Caesar also beats up Chunky, so everybody took a bite out of Chunky. Luckily, Sam had many chunks to give. He then plays Endowment for 4 points, disbands a knight, kind of following in my footsteps, plays reserves for rocks, makes a population, gets another arena, and another lab, and passes the turn. And then to round out this game, Chunky plays an event. We get the impact of industry, so 2 people actually got oil upgrades, and they both get some points against me. Then we have the mechanized agriculture, some science, another card that doesn't do anything, and then some more science, which, let's be clear, does absolutely nothing, and then this, which does nothing. So a lot of nothing there as well, and we're going into the final scoring. Impact of technology is not too bad for me. In fact, did I actually get the most? No. So Chunky Sam with those labs got the most, and got a little bit ahead of Caesar. Then we flipped the impact of population. I did a pretty good job pulling out my workers. Caesar did not, so falls behind further from Chunky Sam. The impact of balance is why I kept the mines and the labs that I did. Is also pretty good for Chunky Sam, so he's kind of being the event king over here. Then we get the impact of government, which is pretty good for me because I did get a lot of civil actions. Chunky's fine with that too. And with this, Caesar's falling farther and farther behind. So going into the event scoring, Caesar was a bit ahead of Chunky Sam, but Chunky has so far beaten Caesar on every single impact. Then we have the impact of science, which Caesar wins. But unfortunately for him, Chunky was second on that one, so it wasn't a huge swing. And with the last impact, we get the impact of progress I mentioned. I get my 6 points from engineering, and things stay where they are. So, the first game of the 2026 World Championship was off to a good start. A very significant margin of winning against my opponents, although it did require me to draw and have time to play 2 wars and also be able to plunder an opponent at a key time and also to have rockets show up at the right time. So, this isn't as skill dominating as it might look because some luck was needed to make this happen. So, next time we'll see the other 4-player game against these opponents, followed by the 3-player games. Please like it or subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.